Hi, what's up, what's up? The full spoilers for Commander 2019 are out. I think we've seen most of it already, but we're going to go through until we've got to cards we looked at before, just to make sure there's nothing crazy that we're missing. This is a reprint. This must go in the Madness deck. It seems pretty solid. Sure. It's one of these Bob type effects where a small black creature can help you out and draw you some cards under certain circumstances or with certain drawbacks. This one is kind of cool because it also triggers on your opponent's turn. If opponents have no cards in hand, you also get a card. And it's a 3/1, so that's neat. I don't really remember this card. I wonder if people try to make it work in like a real discard heavy deck where you're trying to dump your hand and also clean out their hand. It's kind of cool. Problem is that quite often, if it triggers on your opponent's step, it's probably not going to trigger on your step as well. I don't know. Sure. Another one for the Madness deck. This is obviously for the token deck. It's a big token. Here you can see it. There's the twin. Here he is hanging out. Sure. When the bounce lands, when the gates. Each player discards a card, activate this ability only. Especially, alright, that's kind of cool. I didn't know about this card. So probably the Madness deck or maybe the Flashback deck. No, I think the Madness deck. This card I always thought was neat. It seems actually quite cheap for this effect stapled onto a land. I don't think it's actually that good. I always wondered if there would be some combo deck that would be interested in this. But usually those cards are trying to bust out their one gigantic threat for as cheap as possible. They're not really interested in something like this. There's another 4-mana investment. It's usually something that has evasion anyways. Sure. Bounce. Memorial to Folly. Yeah, okay. Sure. Sure. Sure, it's like a tri-fetch. But of course it stipulates basic. It costs a mana to activate. So it's much worse than your typical fetches, but whatever. There's a tri-land. Lifeland. Ah, now this is kind of interesting. I forgot about this cycle. It's the double fetch. And it can grab non-basics too, which is pretty neat. It costs 2, but it can generate mana on its own before you actually pay the sack ability. This makes it a lot worse. Still, I feel like if this was common, it might see play in Pauper. I've been following Pauper a lot more recently. I've become quite interested in it. It's a pretty cool format. And one thing that I didn't really expect from it is the diversity of the mana bases. You can't play typical fetches, shocks, OG tools are right out of the question, of course. So you end up seeing things like bounce lands and life gain lands, and I think maybe something around this power level, but unfortunately. Never been printed below uncommon. Maybe for the best, I don't know. I don't really know what would break Pauper. I don't know the format that well. Sure. This card is cool. All sorts of shenanigans there. Sure, it's kind of cool. Very flavorful. Sure. Soul Foundry. Yeah, that's pretty neat. It's not really too much busted you can do with it. I guess there's maybe some drawback cards that this skirts around, cards that have drawback on cast. But this isn't the easiest way to do that either. Costs 4, you have to have the thing in the hand. But it's neat. Meteor Golem. I always thought this card was kind of cool. I like the slice of artifacts that can destroy things, usually target anything, target permanent or non-land permanent. I think non-land permanent is sort of a flavor fail because usually when meteors hit, the things they're destroying more than anything else is the land. Usually when meteors hit, I don't know what I mean by that. It's not exactly a common occurrence. But yeah, artifacts can do this occasionally. There's stuff like this, destroy target permanent. So it's expensive. It's the same cost actually, but it's entirely colorless. So that's kind of neat. There's probably a few other examples of things outside of ColorPie that, you know, things that are usually limited to one color that artifacts get to do, but at a very decreased rate. Sure, this card's cool. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. Sure. This non-tap repeatable populate, I think, can be quite strong. Especially if you're getting 10/10 Aldrazis. Sure, that's pretty cool. Charms, these are always quite strong, or at least worth considering. Sure, I mean, it's cheap as Naturalize or whatever. You get to populate, which is sometimes incredibly valuable. The problem is, I don't think you can actually cast this unless you have an artifact or enchantment to hit, so if you really just want to populate, it's sometimes awkward. This is one of the most controversial Magic cards of all time. A big disappointment to a lot of people. This is, of course, a fairly relevant plot character that people were excited to see get a card. And the reason it's so weird, it's the 5/7 for 7, even though it's just kind of like an elf lady. And it has, in the art, these big things in the background that kind of look like tokens. And the reason all of this is because, is that what this card is called? No, no, how do I find this? Why can't I think of what this is called? Oh, I think it's an elemental. Let's try. Oh, oh, here we go. Voice of Resurgence. So at the very last second, these two cards were swapped. And the reason was because they decided this should be at Mythic, this effect, and the cycle of these creatures was at Rare. So they decided that, therefore, she would get the effect of this big elemental, and the big mythic elemental would get the effect that she used to have. Such a dumb decision, I think, on Wizards' part. I guess, you know, they prioritize the health of the limited format over such flavor concerns and kind of fan opinion of cards concerns, but it's just such a awkward card. Like, since when is an Elf Shaman a 5/7? What does she have to do with preventing all damage dealt to creature tokens? Whereas this thing, you know, it's kind of like the embodiment of the force, the embodiment of all of these things that are just growing and spreading. And this went on to be a very strong card, and if it was a legendary creature, like it was a strong card in Constructed, so if it was a legendary creature the way it would have been, had it still remained Amara, I think that would have done a lot to actually nerf it in the Constructed format. So they, even in terms of format health, I think they screwed up with this. It's just that they made a sacrifice of Constructed in favor of Limited, which I guess probably they're willing to do. Yeah, the silly Wizards. I don't know. So yeah, it's an interesting story though. I like that they came out and admitted it, because there were so many questions about why this card was the way it was. See, doesn't it make sense? These things are the things that it's making. The elemental creature tokens with power and toughness equal to the number of creatures you control. These things. Alright, whatever. Bloodhall Priest. Sure. Slice and Twain. Sure. Soul of Zendikar. Yeah, okay. So this one must go in the populate deck. Just making a bunch of tokens. Sure. This is kind of neat. This is something this entire Soul Cycle did. I don't know if it was really ever to such great effect, but sure. There's Green's classic Draw 3, which it's gotten to do since, of course, since Planar Shift, or Planar Chaos. Rampaging Boliths, another token generating card. This thing's actually pretty cool. With those recursive lands, you can do a lot. Sure, another token generator. So maybe we've seen all the new cards, because we've gone through quite a lot of this, and it's all been reprints, but whatever. We'll just see if there's anything else interesting. But, you know, this is kind of what I expected. This is kind of cool that they have both of these. Oh, sorry, I thought this was power 3 or less. So I was like, oh, this is for hitting your low token generators, and then when this comes out, this is for your high token generators. But they're both for high token generators. This one is just strictly better than this one. Oh, no, it's not. I'm totally misreading this. This is whenever at ETBs. This is just the beginning of your upkeep. So it's debatable which one is better. Sure, let's be cool. Sure. A Manticore. I always think Manticores are really cool. I like the idea that, you know, we've seen so many like artificial Manticores. And it's like clear that these are being built or engineered for the purpose of replicating. Hey, where are my other Manticores? What? What? Isn't the card called Manticore isn't a Manticore? Wait, what are those called? What the heck? How do I find this? The beginning, I don't know how it's worded exactly. Upkeep, deal 1, deals 1 damage to you. That's definitely not, oh, I still have a Manticore here. Wait, did I? Oh. Yeah. Wait. Is that not what Manticore does? Oh, wait, no. The original one is discard a card. And then it's too many. So put artifacts. I sure hope this finds it, because I'm losing my mind here trying to remember what these things are called. Masticore. Manticore. Masticore. Gosh. So Masticores are the artificial ones. Manticores are the real things that Masticores are based on. I guess. That seems to be what's going on here. Right? These are all artifact creatures that look similar to, well, we closed our Manticore search. Oh, this was all... anyways. Yeah, this was like an iconic creature back in the day. This is like kind of a... not exactly a stronger version. But then they started really pushing it. Or is this one actually older than Molten Sail? No, I guess that's older than Molten Sail. I don't know. Yeah, I guess that's not that good. Well, I don't know. I don't know anymore. Magus of the Wheel, sure. Fiery Temper, Sweet Card. Sure. Sure. This one's kind of cool. I think this is like something they should do with more edict effects, or an interesting way to push edict effects a little more. It's not that they necessarily should do that, but it's a neat idea. So another soul. I don't know if the whole soul cycle is here. We've only seen the 2 so far. Eldest Reborn. Cool that they're using the Saga. What do you would card layout, card template, card frame. That's the term they use. Typically, I think they kind of shy away from using unique frames for just a couple cards per set, but we saw this in the Aftermath frame, so that's neat. Sure, this is like Plaguewind ++, so it's Planeswalkers 2. Sure. Yeah, I think it's all reprints. So, I mean, it's kind of neat to see some cards that we hadn't seen in a while. This thing used to be a big beater in Standard. But there's nothing going to be too mind-blowing. Oh, and then I think this is where we were before. Yes, I'm pretty sure we saw all these. Okay, so we're done. We're caught up. What I'd like to do, just to kind of refresh my mind, is I want to see the mythics. That's just what I'm most curious about. This thing I think is so cool. This is maybe the card I'm most excited about. I just think any sort of deck that plays this would be so much fun. Of course, you could play a really degenerate version that runs just one creature and it's like Emrakul. But I think it would be a lot cooler to just have a whole assortment of gigantic dudes popping out at unexpected times. And then a whole bunch of other eggs, too. Because it's not just eggs that Alta creates, but any egg can pop out a huge guy. So, hell yeah. What else did I think was cool? Yeah, I'm surprised this is that mythic. Same with this. But I guess they're kind of mythic for their decks, I suppose? I don't know. This thing I still think is really neat. A friend of mine and I were talking about it, and he made a really interesting point that you can just make yourself invincible, right? Repeatedly blinking this, and constantly having people attack the other direction than you. So that's a lot of fun. A really cool way to just protect yourself all game. Where's the Son of Yawgmoth? Was that not even a mythic? Are you kidding me? This thing is nuts. That's not even a mythic. What the hell? This is the card I'm most curious about. If it's actually as extremely broken and degenerate as it seems. My guess is actually no. That, you know, Wizards really considered what this must mean, having already lived through some pretty hellish busts-ups of formats because of Phyrexian mana. It's kind of like Thousand Year Storm, you know? That they seem like they're playing with Flyer, but they pushed it just enough that it's like an interesting card. It's a cool card for Cube. I think maybe in Standard stuff was made possible by this, but it's not going to really shake up Legacy or Modern even. So this is probably a similar thing. I don't know. For some reason, I kind of want to see it break something. I think that would be kind of fun if people were just playing the real Suicide Black. No more mana. No more playing lands. Well, past 4. Alright, cool. Cool decks. Let's look forward to Thrones of Eldraine spoilers, which I'm not sure when they're starting, but it probably won't be too long. Feels like we're just constantly in spoiler season now, but I don't mind. I love looking at new cards. I hope you enjoy watching these videos too. Okay, bye-bye.